Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And Rostermania has kicked off to another gear. Asim out of the Los Angeles Guerrillas, it does indeed seem. Huke will be staying over there, potentially Neptune joining that team, and Asim instead of Vivid over the Florida Mutineers. Vivid potentially a completely free agent in this incredible Rostermania period ahead of Major 4. What's going on? Are these teams actually making good moves? Do they have any idea what they're doing? Because I'm not convinced at all that these new rosters that are being trialled are actually any better than their previous iterations. But very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. I've got to give an update on Crimsix actually because, of course, maybe some of you guys noticed it was kind of quiet on social media the last several days. People were wondering exactly why. And the Scrim actually tweets out right here. Sorry, I've been tweeting and doing this stuff much. Been kind of down in the dumps. Firstly with Major 3 not going the way he wanted it to, and then getting to the bottom of the kind of lip thing, right? You guys might have noticed. We talked about it a couple of times before, kind of like Crimsix has swollen upper lip or whatever. And apparently like he's got the diagnosis that it's a condition called angioedema. Not particularly familiar with it, but effectively he's going to go through a pretty, seems rigorous process to try and, he's going to do blood work and stuff to hopefully they can figure out what they've got to do to get him fixed effectively, and also his diet has to change significantly. He reckons he's going to cut out practically everything. Cheese, I mean, as he says here, like his fat ass loves cheese, right, so it's going to be really tough for him, but I mean, like anything apparently that's a green plant, alcohol, fish, tomatoes, all this stuff has got to go. He can only effectively eat air and steaks, as he says right here, so he doesn't look like a Kardashian sibling. So I like, you know, Crim making light of the situation, right? But yeah, it's really been difficult for Crimsix, and it's sad to see a lot of players going through stuff this season, and Crim especially, because I'm sure if he's focusing on this and his health, putting that as a priority, it's not going to be easy for him at all to put his 100% into Call of Duty and focus on that day in, day out, when of course he's you know, changing his diet very significantly, going to feel, I'm sure, very different in himself. He's going to be, you know, going through all these medications and all this type of stuff that's happening with him. So yeah, hopefully everything works out. Like we can see how the season progresses for New York. It's not looking like he's going to go to champs, and then hopefully he can fix up over the next few months and come back stronger next season, right? Who knows? But yeah, totally wishing Crimsix the best, because it has been sad to see a few players this season, Gunless, Crimsix, like Illy, of course, other guys as well, have run into difficulties, health problems. So like yeah, with any luck, Crimsix will get the help he needs and he'll be back in business sooner rather than later. Wanted to mention this because this is like less okay. This is not true. I thought this was obvious. It was a joke. I probably shouldn't have done the kind of the red light thing, because that is usually saved for something that actually is legitimate. But I thought it would be obvious that this was fake, just because effectively I just wanted to take the mick out of the Florida Mutineers, because like we always talk the entire season, even like, you know, before the season began, that they tend to just love stacking their team with ARs. So given they were doing trials, I thought I'd, you know, chuck a little bit of a joke in there, a little bit of a jab in there to say they were trialing what is effectively a 4 AR roster. There's no way this roster would be legitimate, but I guess people kind of bought it a little bit. I mean, look, if you read the second sentence, you would have known that this was fake, because like obviously this isn't true. But you know, just to make it very clear indeed, this is not what they are trialing. They're actually trialing a different team, but still a team that actually might be slower than their previous iteration. It's like I mean, yeah, Elgato and the boys seem to be at it again. If it works out for them, fair play. But it does seem at least that 50% of this all AR team, which obviously would never work, is actually going to be, well, coming to fruition. Now, first of all, wanted to mention this real quick that has just been mentioned here by, well, the new Paris roster apparently is going to be Temp Gravity staying as, I guess, the AR duo, then with Johnny as the new SMG that we saw, John going out, Johnny coming in, and apparently Jimbo is gone in favor of Hamza. Now, I'm kind of confused about this, because I thought that Hamza, maybe I'm wrong about this, was like more of an AR flex-ish player, so I don't really know what's going to go on, like what their roles are going to be. Jetski does say in this clip right here that effectively he has no idea what they're thinking. They've managed to get even worse, but look, we'll see. I'm sure when Crone tweets stuff out like this, we'll consider it in more detail, but I don't really care all that much about what Paris are up to be honest, because I mean, look, their team is chalked anyway. Let's talk Vivid then and the Florida Mutineers situation. So as he tweets out right here, playing COD on cable Wisconsin is something crazy. Now, I think this maybe kind of goes alongside the rumors that Vivid has effectively left already Florida, right? They've kicked him out, and he's out of the team 100% guaranteed, and he's gone from Florida and effectively gone home or whatever, right? They've just got rid of him, which is, I mean, first of all, that is remarkable, and I do wonder what team, if any, is actually going to get him, right? Because there are certainly some teams I think Vivid can improve right now, and the teams that I think he could improve and could, well, maybe use his services have not necessarily, well, don't necessarily seem too eager to make changes, but certainly a team like Boston, for example, like if a guy like Vivid's on the market and there's a, you know, SMG of his caliber maybe on the market there, like you might want to think about it, right? And Los Angeles Thieves as well, we'll discuss them here in a second, but Vivid almost certainly is gone. Rumor had it initially here from long jumping plant _97. He says he's got some sources and he reckons that Neptune to LAG is basically done. Asim or Yeez on Florida, depends on who the team likes more, and then Vivid 100% dropped, even moved out of Florida. That's what he reckons, and then not too long after that, Crone said pretty much the same thing. Mutineers now have Asim on their radar, as well as MajorManiak. I believe they have trials with Sky's MajorManiak, I guess Awakening being one of the SMGs, and then Asim as the second SMG, with Neptune instead of returning to Mutineers as we we initially thought is now looking like he's going to go to Los Angeles Guerrillas in place of Asim. So Spart is coming back in for Gunless, and then another change in the SMG line with Asim out and Neptune into the Los Angeles Guerrillas, with Mutineers going a different direction, bringing Asim on from Los Angeles Guerrillas. So Asim, they want to get rid of him from LAG, it seems, despite he was such a good force on that team at the start of the season. The last couple of months haven't been the same story at all. He's effectively like, well, they're going to get rid of him, and Mutineers have said, okay, we'll have some of that. Let's try and Asim in our team in place of Vivid, effectively, and MajorManiak comes in instead of Dave Paddy. So very interesting set of situations, actually, and I'm just wondering whether this is actually a good move for both teams. On paper, I like the MajorManiak idea in theory, right? You get a bit more search and destroy, get a bit more leadership, better communication. I think the Major into the, guy like Major, guy like, Clayster, for example, in that Mutineers team would have been a great idea. At the same time, though, do the roles really work? Can you actually, get away with having Awakening on that SMG for the remainder of the season? If you want to have a championship contending team, maybe you can. They're still going to be very capable of just winning these massive upset series against the likes of Optic that they always seem to beat, for example. But having Asim instead of Vivid, that's a very interesting one, right? And also LAG deciding that Asim is the guy to go. We talked about it yesterday. Asim or Huke, one of the two seem to be gone. Seems like Slasher is valuing Huke on the team more than he's valuing Asim, or whoever's making the calls over there. So Asim, effectively seems to be gone, because if he's already doing trials with the Mutineers, that indicates that LAG certainly don't want to bring him back, and Neptune in there instead. So definitely the way the roles are working and the team dynamics here is rather interesting, because Asim, he's not quite as a fast, aggressive, crackhead type player as Vivid is, but he's not too far away. He does also bring more on the comm side, right? So I think the Mutineers, from one perspective, they've made some intelligent calls here, right? They're focusing on communication and making things work from that perspective, but I think they lose something with losing Vivid, and it's not like Asim has been great the last couple of months. So I think he's got a lot to prove, actually, if he does step into this team, and I'm really just not convinced about that SMG duo. I think it can work, right? Wake on the one SMG, Asim on the other one, MajorManiak is one of the ARs. I feel like Mutineers have probably done a better job here than Los Angeles Guerrillas have. Maybe you think I'm wrong about this, but I don't really know if Mutineers improve much from their kind of top 6, top 8 that they generally are. I'd be surprised if they, place too much higher than that for the remainder of the season. But Los Angeles Guerrillas, I'm also not convinced this is actually a good move either, right? Because we've got Neptune in the team potentially as well. We'll see here, the Florida roster is meant to be, at least at the present time. Things could all change, as Crone says. Nothing seemingly has been signed yet. Nothing is guaranteed. And even as, what was his name actually? Let me just find it again. Long Jumping Blunt 97 pointed out that he reckoned that actually Yeez could still be an option here instead of Asim. Yeez being their substitute on the roster if they prefer him to Asim in the trials they do. But this seems, at the present time, the more likely Florida roster. In some ways it's an upgrade. I think in some ways it's a downgrade. I do think you lose something with Vivid, and I feel like Vivid's been very harshly dealt in this situation, to be honest, and maybe scapegoated to a degree for the team's lack of success, despite I don't really think being the issue on the roster. I certainly think you can improve other teams. Maybe this team dynamic just didn't work for him for various reasons. Maybe they're just trying to focus on communication and stuff to fix those issues that even Neptune mentioned last year. But of course, the other piece is Los Angeles Guerrillas, right? And this is what I wonder, because Vivid tweets this out, it is what it is, certainly implying he's gone from that team. If you're LAG right now, would Vivid be a guy you wanted to bring back? Now, yes, a similar situation to Neptune and Florida. Vivid and Los Angeles Guerrillas left on pretty fractured terms during the Cold War season, when of course he was pretty much the shining star of that team at the start of last season, said to the team, this team's terrible, we want to make a move, and the team, Ricky Bevels or whoever, just said, okay, you're getting moved, you're on the bench, and then eventually goes to Dallas Empire, has some great results at the end of last season, finds himself on Florida. His KD wasn't great, but arguably the only real SMG on that team for the entire season. So I feel like if I had to choose between, if I was Los Angeles Guerrillas, between Neptune and Vivid, I would arguably choose Vivid, right? I feel like Huke is my slaying SMG, Vivid is my aggressive entry SMG. That could work very nicely indeed. And Neptune, I feel like, is a bit of a risk in terms of he's kind of an unknown quantity in a way. On New York earlier this season, he didn't perform particularly well at all. We know what he was capable of last year. He's done some great things down in Challengers, but I feel like there's no guarantee that Neptune comes in and is revolutionizing the SMG line of that Los Angeles Guerrillas lineup. So if I had to take one team that I prefer out of the new Florida team and the new LAG team, at least that they are trialing, it's probably the Florida team to me. But I feel like this team also has potential as well. Just intriguing your perspective on this one in the comment section below. What do you think of these new teams, if they even come true? Of course, we'll talk about them in more detail as and when they do, and what the players and what some of the reaction is as well. Now, I wanted to mention Los Angeles Thieves, because if Vivid is a free agent, as it seems like he is, and Los Angeles Guerrillas aren't interested, surely another team has to be thinking about it. We're only 10 days or so away, I'm even less than that now, 8 days or so away from the start of Major 4, but look, if you are one of these teams, you could bring Vivid onto your sub bench, for example. Let's say you're Thieves. You're not sure this team is going to be the way to go. We've seen pretty much every single roster that has won the last couple of years has an aggressive SMG, a fast aggro guy, a CleanX and aBeZy, a Shotzzy, whatever, a slaying SMG, second guy in, a Scumper, Simp, you guys know the picture, and then a Flex, and then a main ER. That's generally just how it goes for the teams teams that win. Teams like Florida, teams like Los Angeles Thieves don't really have that, right? Thieves, of course, have struggled with their roles. They only really have the kind of like slightly slower SMG and Envoy. They don't really have the entry guy, the CleanX, the aBeZy of the world that are generally required to win you championships. That's certainly not what Kenny is in the SMG role. And then they do have the flex and the AR positions covered by effectively 3 people, which is kind of what Florida has for the majority of the year as well. Therefore, if I'm Los Angeles Thieves, I'm thinking, look, can I just get Vivid on the team for the next like couple of months? Even if I don't trial him in the team, even if I don't have time to like, try him out in the roster, like let me just say, okay, look, Vivid, you're a free agent, bring you onto my sub bench. And therefore, if things do go horribly in the first couple of weeks, for example, here of the qualification games for Major 4, we can say, okay, look, let's bring Vivid in, because I believe there's going to be effectively like a roster log before Major 4. That at least is the theory. So if you want to make a change, you've got to have them on your sub bench so you can swap them in and out throughout the remainder of the season. So if I was Thieves, I'd be considering it, right? Because I feel like a guy like Vivid, I've talked about it many times, a CleanX, a Vivid, or I didn't really talk about Vivid before, but a player like that probably is what Thieves need. They might think that because they got top 4, they don't need any changes, but I would certainly think if I was Thieves, or even a team like Boston I just mentioned, right, or some of these other rosters that their SMG lines aren't particularly good, I feel like a Vivid could be a good option there, and I'm surprised, frankly, that Florida decided to get rid of him, and I do feel like he was getting left out to dry, maybe scapegoated to some degree on that team. That's just my opinion. Definitely intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below, but I would be surprised if there were no teams at all considering the Vivid option, to be honest. Yeah, definitely intrigued to your thoughts on that one in the comment section below. Just wanted to mention here some, Lion Man cards before we close out the video. Firstly, here from the Minnesota Rokkr, this there's, we'll look at the London ones as well, but yeah, we've got a Tatch here. Of course, he had a great stage again. I mean, his Search and Destroy 0.97. Is everyone's KD in Search on 0.97 nowadays? I feel like the Optic guys we looked earlier today also had 0.97s, but again, Tatch, of course, he killed it in all the respawns. Havok was pretty good as well. I mean, look, they went 5-0 in these online qualification games. The Major, though, was a rather different story, and it was interesting, really, I think, to see Priesth's kind of a redemption arc in a way, at least briefly. He played it very well and was not necessarily their best player. Tatch was still their best player, but Priestahh was not far away from where he needs to be, at least if this team wants to be successful in their online matches, and then went back to LAN, and then they dropped 0.8s again, right? So that is certainly a question for these Minnesota Rokkr guys. But again, the question has been, is Tatch going to get his piece of the pie, his slice of the pie? Major 4 is effectively his final chance to do so, unless they're going to win champs, which seems relatively unlikely, but it is still possible. They're on the border of qualifying. They're about 10 points off the qualification spot right now, so they're going to need some good results in these Stage 4 qualifiers, Major 4 qualifiers, and of course the Major itself if they want to guarantee themselves a spot of the World Championship. But teams like Boston, Los Angeles Guerrillas, even despite the move that LAG might want to make, are still very much in question for falling out of the situation. London have a bit more of a cushion. Of course, Harry was in the team this time at full Gizmo, but individually there was nothing particularly special going on here outside of Afro once again just demolishing here in Search and Destroy. So Afro is, I think, clearly their best player. I do think he's a potential superstar SMG, and I feel like with a slightly better team, Afro would look like an absolute monster. But we'll see what the future holds for him and this London team in general. And just to finish up with this clip from Scump that apparently he's just, I don't even know what game this is, but it looks kind of funny, and apparently Scump's absolutely goated in it. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button and tell us YouTube gods it's a good video, and I was like you should see it as well, and I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.